Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's the Political Brown Kid here. And I want to touch on something that is a topic that I love talking about, and that is hip hop, being as though I'm from that era. I'm in my 40s. And, I came around listening to, I think, introduction being Sugar Hill Gang, being Grandmaster Flash and Furious Five, Grandmaster Flash, Melly Mel, just so forth, Run DMC, of course, LL Cool J can walk it all the way up. I feel as though this conversation or this video that I found in regards to what Special Ed was talking about is actually pretty on time, because I was going to do a video on NWA anyway, and I think now is the time to do it. Maybe, hopefully, it'll get some traction. I want to put my opinion into this, because what Special Ed actually said is something I have actually been saying as well. Now, I may come from it with a little bit of a different perspective, and I'm going to add a little bit of different context. But I think overall, I think that I am in agreement with what Special Ed has said. So for all of those that kind of don't know or have a historical context of hip hop, when you first started looking at hip hop back in the day, and unfortunately I'm not from New York, so I can't go all the way back to Kool Herc days. I can't go back to like the founding fathers of hip hop, founding brothers and sisters of hip hop. I can't do it. But I can, from a perspective, give where I came in. And, when you look at hip hop back in the day, when you had, like I said, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, when you had, even walking it up further, when you're coming into the 80s and you're looking at Run DMC, you're looking at LL Cool J, you're looking at Public Enemy, Heavy D, Father MC, Fat Boys, Beastie Boys, and Special Ed. Even I could throw that Slick Rick, Dougie Fresh. When you start looking at all of those artists, when you looked at hip hop when hip hop first started out, hip hop, you could look and say that there were a few things that you could look at hip hop and you didn't really see in the culture at that time. Well, the first thing that you did see in the culture was a lot of those individuals that I've just named came from either middle class families, or they came from relatively decent backgrounds, as far as guidance and instruction that they were given as far as tools on how to walk through life. So when you listen to earlier hip hop and those artists that I just named, like if you listen to Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel and the Furious Five, when you listen to them, you got a lot of consciousness. You got a lot of social perspective of what was going on at the time. You got the song like White Lines. You got, of course, Don't Push Me Because I'm Over the Edge. You got all of those great songs that actually gave some perspective on what was going on socioeconomically, politically in our society. But then you could also have the diversity of rap too, where you had, other artists giving like funny perspectives, more serious perspectives, and just more lyrically abstract perspectives. And I'll get into that too. So you're looking at people who came from relatively decent backgrounds, middle class backgrounds, and had, either was raised, by, in a good structured family household. The other thing that you really didn't hear too much in hip hop and rap was the N word. You really did not. If you go back and listen to early hip hop, you did not hear the N word prevalent in rap. And, maybe that was because by design, hip hop was a pariah. It wasn't really played on the radio as much. Radio stations really shunned from playing hip hop. So maybe that had a role to play in it. And hip hop said that, we have to keep our music clean so that we can, be culturally accepted. Or maybe it was just our time during then where that word just was not that prevalent in our culture here on the East Coast in rap. But even when you looked at other artists that came out too, when you listen to LA Dream Team, LA Dream Team didn't have that going on, at least in the songs that I heard. When you listen to Ice-T really didn't have too much of that going on, in his raps, even though he rapped about, gangster lifestyle and about West Coast lifestyle. I can't really know too much of Ice-T really dropped the N-word a lot. That I'm really, because I'm not embedded in his music so much, I will say that. But when you listen to that, you listen to the consciousness, You listen. That's one thing I want to say. You listen to the lack of like the N word. You had a few songs like by Just Ice and DMX. They made songs like Latoya or That Girl Is a. Then they had another song because I think they were trying to piggyback off the whole Dougie Fresh, Slick Rick, Lottie Dottie. So you had those three songs that were pretty much on the crass side that could probably fit into the genre that you're hearing about music today. But for the most part, and even LL Cool J did Dear Yvette. So there were songs that were kind of raunchy. But also, too, hip hop did not really have, like I said, you had the diversity in it. You had those, we had like really, I'm not going to call them posers because that's, I know white people use that as a term for, somebody that's trying to, somebody that's fake. But, you would, if you looked at LL Cool J, a lot of rappers, it was about posing, and I'm just talking about like striking a pose or just your mannerism, how you carried yourself. He had like E-Love with him. E-Love's thing was he didn't smile. He just stood on the stage, not really like a hype man, but just kind of like support, just standing on the stage, holding it down. Radio, had the hat on, and just on there chilling. When you had those type of, that was our thing, like Hurricane that ran with Run DMC and was Beastie Boys DJ. He kind of did the same thing. So when you looked at that rap during that time, it was really just about kind of standing hard, looking hard, just hard poses. But that was pretty much it. And sometimes curse word here and there in a song. But you also had the diversity in hip hop where you had the Fat Boys come out who brought in the humor, along with Biz Markie. Biz Markie brought in the humor and fun into hip hop. Them, the Fat Boys. You could look at Father MC and Heavy D. They brought in like the lover boy type aspect into hip hop. Salt and Pepper brought in to like the cool female part of hip hop. MC Light was kind of like that. The version of Rakim, that female version of Rakim, the more lyrical, sister of hip hop. And then you had Queen Latifah, who was kind of like that Paris / Public Enemy of, female version of hip hop with the consciousness. And then you had like you could look at a tribe and say a tribe probably brought in like bohemian type, that more, organic type of hip hop. And then you had the Roots. And so when the Roots came along, later on. But early 80s hip hop, I'm kind of saying all that to say this, is when you look at early 80s hip hop, there was diversity in the subject matter. There was diversity in the personalities that you had floating around, from jovial to straight lace, straight face, serious, consciousness, so forth. You had all of that. And then, just as Special Ed said, and I've been saying this too when I talk to my friends, when you look at hip hop, NWA came along. And I remember being over one of my friend's house and he said, man, listen to this tape right here. And he showed me this tape and it was called, I think, NWA and the Posse. It had about like 30 jokers standing in the alley or just standing around. And I think that's the album that they say don't purchase because I think they were getting ripped off on that one. But that was like the original first cut album. And the music was it was something that we on the East Coast had never heard before. So, of course, the music was fantastic. And, of course, the beats by Drake, dope. It always helps to have tight beats. And then you have the lyricalness of Ice Cube, which made it even better. So, and then you had the personality of Eazy-E that just shined through, his personality just and his aura just shined through. So it made for a perfect combination. It was a perfect storm. And when you listen to those songs like Strawberry, Dope Man, all of that, it was just something that was totally different that we or at least I on the East Coast had not heard before. You never got that type of West Coast perspective that NWA brought into the game. But the date was the time when the introduction of, really you could say, kind of like hip hop went into the period that we've been trapped in for like the past 30 years. Is that when NWA came along, they were this gangster group, this hardcore, this is where we from, this is what life is like here, and we're hard. And of course we know in Black culture, it's all about being hard. That's what being cool is, being hard, just standing and being tough. That's a part of it. That's not necessarily all of it because there are cool kids that are just cool, smooth back in those days, but that's a big part. Everybody wants to be a tough guy. So when you saw NWA come along, it was like, oh yeah, number one, they got nice music, nice lyrics, and they got this persona. And it seems as though when NWA came into the game and the way they took off, not blaming NWA, I'm not going to blame NWA per se, not yet, but they do play a role. You cannot say that they don't play a role in the dysfunction of hip hop because they do. But everybody plays a role. You had, when the kids gravitated towards it, I did. But, that's just one group. At that time, they just gave us a different perspective. So to me, it was just kind of like, well, they're adding in a different element. We have like the cool people like Slick Rick and them. We have Rakim and them. We have the cool kids of hip hop. You have the lover boys of hip hop, Father MC, Heavy D, so forth. You have the abstract poetics like, Tribe. You have the funny guys, Biz and, Fat Boys and things of that nature. And then it was the NWA, they're bringing in a new genre of this gangster rap. So that's how I took it. The problem was the music industry, and I guess the executive said, this is selling and it's selling well. We need more of this. So then it really just became about like on the West Coast, particularly, then that's when you started seeing like Compton's Most Wanted. Then they had all of these other groups. It was like, find me a group from Compton. It was like you had about several groups from Compton. It seemed like they all had to have Compton in their name in order to sell. So you had all of these groups from Compton coming out. And then I think that, and even in an interview that I think Run DMC did, and I could be wrong on this, but I do believe it was Run DMC, and I think Jam Master Jay said it. But they were like, and this is definitely true. They were like, yeah, we didn't speak that way on the East Coast. We didn't call our girl, hey, B, come over here. And I think they mentioned that they would hear the West Coast guys call their girls B's, and the girls would come, and that's how they treated the girls, and the girls liked it. And so, and I think them and Run DMC said that they were amused by that because they had never seen it before. And they're right, because on the East Coast, you couldn't talk to a girl that way. You just could not. And so I think that when you start seeing that in the culture, then all of a sudden now you're starting to see, this rise of, the B word. And now in order to be tough, this is what toughness is, to call girls B's, to, talk about how you slang, illicit substances, how you did this, or who you're affiliated with. And also, too, keep in mind, that's a part of the culture as well, right? Where you're from. And you got to show everybody that your neighborhood is better than someone else's. Trust me, it's done all over the place. When you listen to DC go-go music, one thing that they'll say is, where y'all from? They have shout outs and they tell everybody, and it's a call and response, where you from? And then the audience shouting out where they from, which part of DC they're from, which neighborhood they're representing. When you listen to hip hop, it's the same thing. Hip hop, you listen to Nas, he's always talking about Queensbridge, repping Queensbridge, trying to bring Queensbridge up and elevate Queensbridge. And then you hear other rappers like Biggie and them trying to elevate Brooklyn and, so forth and so forth. The Wu representing Staten, doing all of that. And so the West Coast was doing that with their music. They were saying, we're going to elevate LA and we're going to elevate Compton or whatever borough, part of the, LA we're from. And so then it becomes this whole challenge of, well, we're cooler or harder. And then now everyone's competing. And so I think that, once you had this birth of all of these other Compton named groups, then it became about, then you started seeing on the East Coast, and then also in addition to society shifting with, drugs and narcotics and, drug dealing and things of that nature, then you start seeing this rise of the gangster rapper in New York, right? You start seeing like, man, you got Nas and them coming out and everybody wants to talk about how they sold this, how they sold that. You have 50, you have Jay, you have all of these rappers, and everybody has to talk about what they've done in the streets. And now you have this whole street credibility thing coming up, because now everybody has to have street credibility. And on the West Coast, it's kind of similar, not really so much, but I mean, if you're tied in with one of the gang groups, then it made for perfect sense. You see all of these dumb rappers and they're not even rappers, Chris Brown and them. It's like the stupidity of it. It's like you joining a gang after you became famous, and you're not even from LA. You're from Virginia, and Lil Wayne, you're from Louisiana, but yet you're joining these gangs after you've been a celebrity for so long, just so you can have gang affiliation. And then you have these rappers wanting to get arrested just to show that that they're in the streets and that they're keeping it real. And all of this kind of, like I said, you started to see this shift when NWA came along. And then now when you look at rap, it became about, like I said, once NWA broke out, and then once you start seeing, like I said, around 1990, 91, when Nas and them come out, now it's about who keeps it real, who's the realest. And if you don't have that street credibility, you're nothing. You're just a poser. So that's why I typically agree with special ed. And also, too, just to get back to NWA, to look at NWA, when you look at NWA, when they first came out, and again, like I said, the tight beats by Dre definitely helped elevate it and definitely helped, push NWA up there. But Q really drove the content of the music. But when you listen to the first album, the difference for me was this. The difference in leadership. When you looked at Ice Cube as a leader, and then when they turned it over to Ren, I don't even like Ren. But, we can talk about, Ren is nothing to even talk about really. But when you listen to them underneath Ice Cube, even though Ice Cube was talking street stuff like in Strawberry, Dope Man, and even, F the Police and all of this other stuff, there was a social consciousness on that side. It was from a gangster's perspective, you can say. It was said more crass than what Public Enemy would say it. It wasn't said in the same way that they would say it, but there was a lot of social consciousness in there. Basically letting you know what goes on in the streets, from the perspective of, a female who's addicted to, narcotics, from, being harassed by the police, just the various songs that Ice Cube was writing. But there was social consciousness in Ice Cube's lyrics. Even when he broke out on his own, you could see it, like definitely with America's Most Wanted, which I considered like one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. You can hear the social consciousness in Ice Cube's rhymes, and it reflected when he was in NWA. When Ice Cube left, and it got turned over, I guess, for Ren to become the bearer of the pen and kind of pen the songs for them, it just turned into a bunch of bull crap. And I'm going to say that to put it mildly. And the reason why I say that is look at that album, N-Word for Life. It was all, once again, it's like we're going to capitalize on the N-word. We're going to capitalize it because we're using that term, and they the one that kind of hyper injected the N-word into hip hop. And then when you look at it, then you got to name a whole album N-Words for Life. And then when you listen to the songs, on that song, it's plain to see, N-Word for Life. You listen to that song, and then the song about them, offing some female. It was just like Ren doesn't even write from social consciousness, probably because he has none. He's probably just an ignorant dude. And then probably being egged on too by Dr. Dre to just write gangster stuff, because that's what Dr. Dre does. He capitalizes off gangster stuff. He wanted Rakim to do gangster music, and Rakim wouldn't do it. Thankfully that Rakim would not sell his soul out, because Rakim is a god. He's a 5%er. Thankfully he didn't do that crap. But that's what the direction that Dre likes to steer people in, except for the white people. He allows them to be free, but he wants the black people to say crazy stuff. But just listening, like I said, when you listen to NWA with Ren, it was just really, there was no social consciousness there. It was just a bunch of bull crap. And so that's why I tend to agree with special ed. Once again, before NWA, you look at hip hop before NWA, and you look at it after NWA. And I say that too, because you look at Ice-T. Ice-T didn't have that type of effect on rap in the West Coast. As far as the degradation of hip hop, Ice T reported on, I guess what he saw as well. But then there was also substance in what Ice T was saying. Ice T was trying to let you know in a song like Hustler, if you watch the video, he was letting you know, like at the end, this is what it leads to. So again, like Cube, he had that social consciousness, where he was trying to paint a picture. Yeah, it looks glorious here, but the end doesn't end well. But, once again, with NWA, they went down a path. They saw the money, they saw their gimmick, and they saw what their meal ticket was, and they pushed that envelope. And they definitely did that when Cube left. When Cube left, they tripled down. They tripled down on it and made it even worse. And then the record companies, once again, like I say, the record companies, and not only just the record companies, but then you look at the music stations. They're the ones pushing this stuff. The thing that I find interesting, I'm glad I brought that point up. I'm glad that hit my mind. This is the thing that brings me to the music, the radio station. They're probably the biggest hypocrites in all of this because they have the power to control what they play. Remember, I told you guys back in the 80s, well, at least 79 and early 80s, they would not play hip hop on the radio. You could not get a hip hop song played on the radio. Hip hop just wasn't played. I think they even refused to play Jody Watley's Friends at one point in time because Rakim had the rap verse on there. But then it finally broke and then they eased into that. But there was a no rap policy on the radio. And a lot of people, young people, y'all don't understand or know this, but that is definitely true. So the radio has the power to play and dictate what they want to play. But you look at what they play today, they play a bunch of hip hop. They love getting egged on when they see things like Nas and Jay-Z beefing, or when they see artists beefing and going at each other. They talk about it in their little weekly news reports, and they even talk about it for hours, like the beef that's going on between Ja Rule and 50 Cent. And they talk about these beefs, East Coast, West Coast, and they play these songs like Hit 'Em Up. They play all of this stuff. And then once somebody gets hurt, then they have a one-day policy of we're not going to play any violent hip hop. We're just going to just play peace and love, and life should be all about love. And then a week later, they forget their no violent standpoint and they go back to playing the same BS. They don't promote artists like, when you have a song by like The Roots, when you have groups like The Roots, or when you have like the only artists that you could really see get like mass play would be like Tribe Called Quest. And you can even say Outkast, because Outkast kind of transitioned, you can definitely see the style change from Southern Playalistic, from their first album to, like their later albums like Atlians, Aquemini, so forth. They transition into that like tribe status, but you don't see them necessarily pushing De La Soul or pushing these other artists. They really push the more violent hip hop. And you look at it today, they push these female rappers that just make females look terribly bad. They don't push any, I'm pretty sure. And then you have a person like myself say that all of these then that's when we start using absolutes by saying all of these females are just, nasty, and they say the most trifling things, when there's probably some female out there right now who's trying to do the right thing, trying to make good music and trying to do it in a decent way, but she can't get airplay, so she has to compromise herself. And the same thing for guys. They're trying to make good music, and the only thing that they can do, because they know what's selling, is talking about doing this, doing that. And so therefore we get the same stuff. And that's where the radio stations play their part into this as well. So I just wanted to make this, and hopefully, this is just a quick video just on what Special Ed said. I do appreciate Special Ed. Love seeing him. I'm glad to see him. Definitely loved his music back in the day. Special Ed definitely was a nice lyricist. Definitely dropped some good songs on us. And I'm glad that he came out and spoke out on it. And I hope that everyone listens to this video. Provide your thoughts in the comment section. Definitely hit the like, share, and also subscribe. But this is the Political Brown Kid. Take care.